Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Joshua Mendonça, and I would like to thank the audience for taking time out of their day to join us for today's webinar. Before we delve into the presentation, let me cover a few housekeeping items. Firstly, please note that this webinar is being recorded and all participant lines are muted throughout. If you have any questions or encounter any technical difficulties, please make use of the Q&A box on the lower right-hand corner of your screen, addressing your inquiries to all panelists. Now, without any more delay, allow me to present our first speaker, John Zielinski. John, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining this afternoon. We could talk about the investment data platform. And this will be a panel discussion, but we're also going to have a demo as well. So hang in there. I know everyone loves demos. We will be showing some software as well. So just to kind of give an introduction to who's on the call here and we've got joining today's webinar. So we've got Chris Napoli, who's joined us from Snowflake, Rich Robbins, who is a co-founder and systems integrator lead for financial services at Exafluence. And I'm John Zielinski. I'm responsible for the data management business within capital markets at FIS. And so when we talk about the investment data platform, I think what really led up to this for us is looking in financial services, working with a lot of our customers that we've got both in the buy and sell side across the different participants of capital markets. We're seeing, obviously, over the last several years, a dramatic increase in the diversification of investment portfolios between, obviously, public markets, but much more so into private markets, private credit, real estate, infrastructure, right? There's been a lot of portfolio diversification in terms of chasing returns, chasing alpha, with the challenging macro environmental conditions that have surfaced and have been changing over the last several years. And what that's kind of led to is a lot of complexity. So there's a lot of different systems in play, both from a front office perspective in terms of trading and trade origination, compliance, reporting, through middle office and back office when you go through accounting and books of records and producing your end-of-day, end-of-month reports out to investors, work with administrators. There's a lot of challenges that come into play with respect to the diversification, the multiple different systems that are needed to be in place to support these different asset classes. And that ultimately results in is challenges in terms of how we bring all of this data together, both in terms of bringing data into and governing it in terms of security master and pricing master and things that are really common across these multiple different applications that need that information, but also how we bring the data together for reporting, for analytics, for decision support, for supporting investment decisions, right? Having a way to bring that data together, expose it, deliver it via the cloud has been incredibly important. And so we really, looking at, preeminent technology platforms and players, we engage with Snowflake in that regard. Obviously, looking across financial services, a lot of our customers, a lot of participants in the industry have really embraced Snowflake as a preferred platform of choice in terms of delivering data to the cloud and making it available, and even more important, sharing it amongst the different participants in the ecosystem. And we also, started working with a company called Exafluence, which has really been in the forefront in terms of working with Snowflake and delivering data management solutions, EDM platforms, exploiting a lot of the capabilities that Snowflake brings to the table, as well as some of the cloud native technologies that exist both in AWS, Azure, right? We work with a lot of these different providers. So that's what really led us to this point. And what we've endeavored to create is what we're calling the investment data platform. And what this really is, it's basically a platform that enables us to bring data together from whether it be your public market systems for doing traditional sort of assets, as well as private markets, private equity, private credit, derivatives, real estate, bring all that data together into a singular data platform. And all that data can be brought in a near real-time fashion. It can be normalized into a common data model that really supports reporting on positions, holdings, performance, risk, bringing in ESG data, And there's more and more, right, capabilities that come into that as we really partner with the other data providers and data that's available in the Snowflake ecosystem. But we've partnered with Exafluence and Snowflake to create this platform that really enabled us to bring that data together and to provide different sorts of views of that information, whether it be trade date, settlement date, position, tax views, strategy, sector, right, and really get more insights into the data that is contained and locked up in these systems, and be able to share that information downstream with others, providers, and investors and others that need access to that information, right? So it's been really transformational for us in terms of being able to launch this solution. We launched it earlier this year to the market, and we're seeing a tremendous amount of interest in it to date, and really excited to be here today to be able to share with you and have a discussion around these capabilities, what it's meant to our customers, and give you the opportunity to really get a look at it through a demo. So with that, what I'm going to do is just kind of invite Chris and Rich to join me in a discussion here just to talk about some of these challenges we face firsthand and how we've been able to leverage these technologies to really help solution the problems that our customers have faced. And so first, I'll just ask Chris just a question in terms of Snowflake and the data cloud. Seeing this has a critical mass, like I mentioned, with many different companies out there, whether it be FIS, of course, but also a lot of other financial services customers, BlackRock, right, major banks, data providers, FactSet, Bloomberg, Refinitiv, others. Everyone's really embracing this platform as a way to deliver data. And what are you seeing as the main benefits, and why has this really taken the industry by storm?
Yeah, John, thank you first and foremost for inviting me onto your webinar. And by way of formal introduction for everyone on the webinar and everyone to view it later on, I'm Chris Napoli. I lead wealth and asset management here at Snowflake. Part of what we have underneath that is, from a vehicle and organizational structure, private equity and private credit, but even more importantly, from an asset class perspective, private equity, private credit, alternative digital assets, et cetera, right? And to your earlier slide where it had mentioned the slow adoption of the marketplace, it was really more along the lines of organizations being able to take advantage of Snowflake. But the main question that has kind of plagued our industry since at least I've been working in it, and even beyond that, is what is the data model for investment management, right? That is the catalyst that kind of helps us create these things such as data meshes and more modern architecture that truly let data flow like water, right? Which is ultimately the tenet of kind of how you would design a system. Remove as many hops as possible, share and data so that you could actually execute almost at the speed of thought, right? Ideally, depending upon the workflow. And that brings me back to why the industry has adopted Snowflake. Snowflake is a managed service, right? The data cloud is actually software that runs on all the hyperscalers, be it GCP, Azure, and AWS, as you have referenced earlier, John. And what it permits is to break down silos, not just internally, i.e., let the compliance department see the same data as the trading department, as the same data as the risk department, as John just eloquently highlighted, but also to do it in intra. Between first, second, and third parties, i.e., an organization such as, say, Bloomberg back office being able to share and view their live database to one of their clients, that accordingly then to be shared, say, to a solution provider like FIS in order to run an application, right? Leveraging our native application frameworks or managed application frameworks, depending upon the model, to ultimately shorten the time to decision and the time to insight, or even just the time to report that is required for our industry, based upon each of those workloads. So ultimately what Snowflake has allowed, or the adoption of it, is really the fact that it allows you to lever the compute of the cloud, the ELT capabilities, the extract, load, and then transform. That's really what lets everyone kind of remove themselves from the data operations, but even more importantly now start to share and build code right inside of Snowflake, and not just share data privately, secure and governed and muted, as well as encrypted at rest and in motion, but even more importantly now to start developing applications. So if you think of, say, the iPhone, which I just happen to have one here, it's the same way that you would think about Snowflake as the operating system for the financial services industry that ensures that you could rather quickly just download an app and start executing the code without having to worry about malware, things of that nature, right? It's been kind of vetted by by Snowflake in order to be permitted to be on our marketplace. So that is really what has allowed us to accelerate and become kind of the driving infrastructure for the migration to the cloud, then importantly, having a data strategy that we're going to talk about today. And then ultimately those are all the inputs into what would be required for an AI strategy. And we could get into that in greater detail as we go on. But thank you, John, for the question. It's been a pleasure. And John, I actually have a question back to you, if that's okay. I know FIS is committed kind of moving into a consumable data model and allow pretty much all the products, but particularly in the private markets, to be powered by Snowflake. Can you articulate a little bit more on your data strategy, how you're thinking about leveraging Snowflake, and kind of where you are today and where you think you may be going in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Chris, for the question. I mean, I think for us, it's a couple of things we're really trying to solution here, leveraging this data platform that we've created with Snowflake. And one of them is really, when you look at our customers that consume SaaS solutions from us, right? They want greater access to their information beyond just using standard APIs. And so delivering our data via Snowflake to the platform gives our customers greater access to that, right? We can replicate their data in near real-time fashion. They can plug it into their other systems downstream or do whatever they need to do with it, which is a capability we didn't previously had. And so that's one has been a game changer for us. We're really going solution by solution in terms of how we approach delivering data from our core platforms into Snowflake through the data platform. The second is really around bringing data together, right? Kind of what I was articulating at the beginning when you look at multi-asset use cases where we really need to bring data together from these systems so we can report on them from one place rather than from 3 or 5 or 10 different places, right? And so that's really where the power comes in terms of creating a data model, curating that data, and creating an experience that our clients can then leverage for reporting, but also, AI, as you mentioned, right? And being able to also unlock advanced analytics and other insights into the data that's now been brought together and normalized via the platform. So thanks for the question, Chris. I think it's really relevant. And I have one back to you, actually, just on the topic of native apps, right? Because the FIS investment data model is something that was built as a Snowflake data app from native app from the ground up, which is real. How are you seeing that platform and that capability as an accelerator for improving business processes?
Yeah, and thanks for the question, John. And it is the accelerator that you just mentioned that is truly transforming the speed at which more, the larger tiers of the organizations, or as we move to different tiers of organizations, can start adopting Snowflake, right? To kind of help quickly accelerate to the powers of the capabilities of the platform, i.e. what does that mean? Creating data models internally, just whether it's in Snowflake or anywhere else, right? It's a pretty extensive process. The data management in general tends to be that for every dollar that you spend for data, it winds up being that it's 80 cents on the dollar in order to manage it, right? And part of our goal in order to accelerate the adoption and move people to things like artificial intelligence is to lower that total cost of ownership of data. And native applications, which permit organizations now to start sharing user-defined functions, stored procedures, and ultimately in the future outright just applications as our framework develops with our Streamlit acquisition. It's allowing organizations just to quickly have that model out of the gate, right? Hydrate it with third-party data sources that may already be mapped in the model, right? As part of our data marketplace, to just get right to the business objective that you're trying to task at hand. If you think of it another way, the way that enterprise software has been delivered for up until now has mostly been time and materials software implementation of a 3-year or 18-month that turns into 36 months, right? Kind of the implementation cycle. Those professional services and that piece can just go away, right? If the data model or the data sitting in the data model is inside of Snowflake or sitting within a table inside of Snowflake or joined and even viewed to Snowflake, it could just rather quickly be read by the application, run the code accordingly and no longer in a black box fashion, and then pushed the output back into the actual client's same Snowflake instance, i.e. you're not moving data all around the world or all around the cloud or whatever it may be in SFTPs and APIs anymore. We're taking the code and pushing it right into your Snowflake instance so that it helps with things like cybersecurity breaches. We're not moving the hops around. We're being able to just directly bring code to the data where it's sitting encrypted at rest, governed, etc., so that it kind of keeps moving into a more automated fashion. So it has been rather game changing for us. There's a lot of organizations that see the opportunity, one, to disrupt the legacy organizations, but even more so for first party organizations to commercialize not only their data, that's always been told that data is an asset, but now the IP of their business rules, right? Without ever anyone seeing what the actual logic is of those business rules. So with the RBAC controls, the conditional masking controls, the dynamic masking controls of Snowflake, you no longer have to fear that someone's going to see your IP, right? That's kind of the business rules. The last 20% of that data model tends to be the IP of organizations. And you can feel comforted that it will not be revealed, right, as you kind of interact and transact with your first and your second and your third parties. So it's really been quite the accelerant. And I know, Rich, a part of that, I know disruptive data and Exafluence have really been thinking about that as well. Perhaps we could chat about that a little bit more as we kind of go on.
Sure.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think the speed of delivery is really important, right? I mean, I think that the promise of the cloud, right, is all about speed and agility, right? And the fact that we can leverage the app marketplace, right, to really facilitate the distribution and rapid implementation onboarding is really powerful, right? So that's definitely something we're keen to take advantage of. And so I'll invite Rich to the next question as well here, right? Just on the topic of AI, right? Obviously, a tremendous amount of buzz around that, ChatGPT and GenAI, large language models, right? Everybody's talking about it, looking at applications and usage of it in their businesses, right? Some feel it might be overhyped, right? You always worry about the hype cycle with any of these sorts of things. But I'm just wondering, what's your perspective on that, right? Do you think it's hype? Do you think there's real application? What are you seeing there so far?
Well, thanks, John, for the question. And we're going to demo a chatbot with those same components. It is not really the typical hype cycle. There is real value here. You'll see we're able to, via Streamlit, ChatGPT, querying Snowflake and rendering results and visualizations. It works. It's an accelerant. There's some consistency issues, but given what's there now as a baseline, and like we're working with Snowflake where they're going to encapsulate it, there's data security issues. It has to be localized for many people in financial services, but it works. And, it generates pretty good quality code. And it's kind of amazing. We'll show that to you a little later. So I don't think it's overhyped. I think this is just the beginning. It will be there. It's contextual, and it's got a lot of applicability in our business.
Yeah, and what I have seen, similar, John, to what Rich has said, B2C, i.e., like leveraging ChatGPT. I recently ran a book club, and we forgot what the themes were of the book because it was a couple of months past the day that we were going to do. It was rather quick for me to just highlight the book and get out what at least I thought the themes were, and accordingly how to run a book club, right? I didn't need to think anymore along those lines. Applying LLMs internally to first-party data, that's A-okay, right? I think at that point, no one, outside of needing to know how to train the LLM in order to create these chatbots, etc., that is probably doable and able to be in production. But we're not yet at the point where it's enterprise adoption, where you could lever the IP of other parties within the LLM models, because that InfoSec, that definition of IP, the data vendors, the people that are that potentially have commercial concerns, that has not yet been defined, and I have not truly seen yet something to that nature. So is it overhyped? No. Is the timing of it going in implementation in the financial service industry yesterday? I don't think it is. Will it be in the future, and will it definitely disrupt how we go about our day-to-day basis? 100%.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, the speed at which this is moving is just unprecedented, right? In terms of how quickly these technology being adopted. And to a certain degree, it's raising a lot of questions around IP law and right content and ownership, right? Which will be interesting to see how that plays out. But definitely see a lot of applications in this domain, certainly with respect to reporting. And Rich, you did mention that we are going to be seeing a demo of that later in this session, right?
Yes.
And I guess could you just share some lessons learned as part of creating that demo and your experience working with this technology?
Sure. So one of the things that you want is consistency. You feel like the model is sentient, but it's context driven. So the prompts, how you provide the model the question to get render the answer. In this case, we're going to be generating SQL against our Snowflake native app, and then we're going to also render visualizations. So repeated testing and prompt engineering is key. The other thing is the models are not they can hallucinate or come up with wrong errors. So what we really need to do is train it, and vector databases are there to do that. But the speed at which, getting back to the speed, because Snowflake's open to Python, we use some open source query DB, and for folks interested, happy just shoot me an email or a prompt, and we can go into detail. So you want to really test it, you want to train it, but the prompting is key because the model is not deterministic. It solves a problem. It's trying to do it. So you want to do it, and there's levers you have. So there's 0 to 1. 0 will do a literal traditional, I type this in, you'll kind of get an answer. And then if you go at 1 in the setting, it will actually freeform, not think, but provide answers that you can't comprehend. It'll forget the columns that we're talking about going against the database. So our model, when we set it in the midpoint, it's called a temperature setting, and we got that. And the last thing is the cost and efficiency. How the tokens, how the vendors price this. It is not a free ride, but in terms of the productivity and the ability to answer, you can think of our investment clients have RFPs from investment consultants to be able to work against their data in real time and get specific answers. It's pretty amazing. And then to be able to go outside to other data sources in the cloud via API and have the model do all that for you is pretty amazing. So hopefully that answers that. It's not a quick answer that I really want to go over the architecture. We don't have time today, but we use the OpenAI components. We use Snowflake Streamlit, and we also use some open source query DB. So I think that's enough for a webinar, but happy to answer more questions in detail.
Great.
Great. Thanks.
You know,
go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say, Rich, I know Disruptive Data happened to be one of the key launch partners for native applications, but also the
and that's a subsidiary of
I was about to say the professional services arm of Exafluence has a rather large data migration practice. So can you share, I guess, how FIS is working along with you with both those parties, and how it's helping you onboard customers a little bit quicker, and then more importantly, I guess for selfish interest here, how Snowflake helps bridge that gap, right, to accelerate time to market?
Well, obviously, ELT, the ability to instantly see BlackRock's Aladdin data as tables that are permissioned, or FactSet's ESG we've done work with, it just immediately shortens the time frame of the. Typically, I have to integrate, pick it up off an SFTP site, call an API. I have the business people know exactly what they want. They're talking to coders. Many of them don't understand the investment domain specifically. It rapidly shortens that. And so what we also provided, and FIS has, it's called the Master Data Management Platform. It's any domain, as John mentioned, positions, transactions, securities, prices, corporate actions. And it's a way for the business people to shorten the time frame to write their own rules. And we're going to demo that quickly as well. Into integrated exception management. In all my years working in this space, it's 25 years. I also ran technology for investment management firms. The handoff between the people who know the business and the technical people, the SQL jockeys, it just adds complexity and adds time. So we sought to simplify it. And so the Snowflake model, what we can do with Snowflake now, masking, obfuscation, limited views, so that FIS can share their product data to their customers, and then we integrate and pick it up into the multi-asset model. It's just unprecedented in how quickly we can get to market and our clients can go live. Like you said, the projects can take 36 months. We think we can knock the time down by 40 to 60%. And the other thing Snowflake does, because it's a consumption model, is we can follow that as well. So the total cost of ownership, not only do you get live faster, your recurring is less from the traditional enterprise model. Back to you, John.
Yeah, no, that's great, Rich. I mean, I think, obviously it's all about speed, like we said, right? So definitely looking at how we can leverage your team to help our customers, right, take advantage of these capabilities as quickly as possible. And so with this, I just got one last question here before we move on to the demo. And this is for you, Chris, and just coming back on the topic of security, right? Because obviously when we're looking at moving potentially sensitive data, position portfolio data to the cloud, right? There's always concerns around security of data and is my data encrypted? Who can see my data, right? How do I ensure that my data is safe, right? And certainly for buy-side participants, that's extremely important. And I'm just curious, what are you seeing in that regard, and what are you hearing from our clients, and how does Snowflake help?
So just for reference, financial services industry is over 25% of Snowflake's total revenue, right? And part of why I highlight that is because the financial services industry is the most regulated and the most sensitive, right, to data. Because ultimately in wealth and asset management, what is alpha? It's having the secret for as long as you possibly can before everyone else discovers the secret, right? That eventually is what erodes alpha. So you have to be the first to transact, the first to sell, right? You have to make bets basically on when there's going to be another participant on the other side of a trade where you feel that you have information that they don't, right? In order to be either make money or lose, depending upon which way you want the security or the asset class to move. We are the largest within wealth and asset management, winds up being the largest and most developed sub-industry within the financial services industry. So just to highlight that the largest of the large, the top 48 out of the top 50 at this point, largest asset managers of the world leverage Snowflake. The top private equity firms and the private credit firms in the world leverage Snowflake in some capacity because it's speed to market. It's the fact that it's able to be secure and governed, GDPR compliant almost out of the box. Those are the things that have allowed us to be adopted in the financial services industry, to be that large of the percentage of revenue of the consumption model of Snowflake. What does that mean going forward, right? Our native applications are the next extension of it. So normally organizations like Goldman Sachs, for example, have developed ESG native applications in order to change the commercial model of how they deliver their ESG risk models, because it's always been an issue, at least to the buy side, that you don't want to actually send your prime broker or to the investment bank or the other side of the trade your actual positions, because you could know what securities are of interest, but you don't want them to know the quantity. It just offers too much information that may be used detrimentally against you in the future. So the fact that that is now a commercial and a delivery and a technical model for an organization like GSAM to deliver to their constituents, to their buy-side clients or the other side of the trade, just to let you know how secure the Snowflake data cloud, the financial services data cloud is. And that is really what has permitted us to innovate and really kind of transform how the industry is operating. And you've seen that, or others can see what we're doing with DTCC for liquidity models accordingly, what we're looking to do here in terms of bringing transparency and automation to the private markets. It's a proud thing to be able to say it's a fortunate part of my career to be part of the team looking to do that, and to be welcomed onto webinars like this to keep trying to bring operational efficiency, transparency, and to make our day-to-day easier than it has been in the past by leveraging the capabilities of Snowflake. So thank you, John, for the question. I appreciate it greatly.
No, that's great. And I feel like we're in good company, right? There's a lot of just looking at the industry to embrace this, right? Just provide comfort, right? That it's been very thoroughly vetted, and security obviously has been built in by design, which I think is fantastic to hear. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, Rich, for the panel discussion. I think at this point, what we'll do is we'll move over to a demo. So I'll turn things over, and John and Rich, if you want to.
Sure. So I want to. Yeah, thanks, John. I just wanted to tee up the demo for folks today. So getting back to the earlier question on our migration practice and my experience in data management along with my colleagues at Exafluence, one of the things we saw was there was never a single point or a single pane to see all my exceptions, whether it's file-based, whether I'm connecting to the Snowflake data cloud, I'm calling, invoking APIs. And I want to see my data quality across the spectrum from simple things like reading file headers, number of records, dates are correct. I want to check and see that what changed. And my consumption is my normally ingesting 1 gigabyte, and today it's only 10 megabytes. I want to know about that. I want to integrate the holiday calendars. And then I want to take that further. I then want to transform and align my data. And then I may have, if I'm mastering a security or I'm mastering a product, a strategy, I want to see if the rules to do the gold copy, if there's a failure, I want to present all the data sources in one screen to be repaired if that's a decision. If not, it can be pushed back to the source system. And then what I never saw in the industry was an out-of-the-box role-based access control ability to follow the sun, have teams assigned to exceptions, and then hand it off. And we're going to show you this quickly today, along with the codeless rules, which goes back to when we're doing these migrations, what we learned was we're automatically capturing in real time all these rules. They can feed data governance, which is important to a regulated industry. Typically, governance programs, they have trouble just meeting and tracking the regulatory requirements. Here, anything that's transformed to normalize, we have full lineage and audit, and we're going to show that. And then John's going to quickly show multi-asset reporting, public and private markets, integration across InvestOne and InvestTran with some derivatives positions and look-throughs, because look-throughs are very important. Most of the portfolios of our customers are looked at multiple ways. Some view it as accounts, others as strategies, product views, and you really want to capture that in one place and have it consumable from your data science, data analytics, and client reporting. And then the last thing we'll show you is generative AI, which against Snowflake in real time, we're going to query, create the SQL queries in Snowflake, render it in Streamlit, integrating with ChatGPT, and even going out and getting some current stock prices, again, through an API, all in one integrated, repeatable, orchestrated stream. And that's what the FIS solution has. It's built for repeatability, full audit, lineage, all the things that the traditional legacy on-prem apps had trouble. They weren't elastic. And John, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Rich. Okay, guys. Hi, John Wood here from Exafluence. We're going to show you the FIS investment data platform. So what you're looking at here is really the investment data platform, which is comprised of what you've heard about the investment data model and the master data management capability across all data domains. Multi-tenant, just a little orientation, right? It's a multi-tenant system. It has role-based access control. You can access all the functionality from the menu on the left. And just a quick view, give you a little quick view of the data model. This is just a snapshot. This is not the full model, but it gives you an idea for the relationships. And this is extensible model that we have already extended it for a few clients, and in conjunction with the FIS products as well, of course, as a initial step. And just to give you a sense that there's a fund-to-fund look-through, which I'm going to show you an example of in a moment. But just to get to the heart of it, and we're going to skip over a lot that we can go into more detail individually. Waterfall rules for gold copy. I wanted to show you this example of where a performance target system requires some transformation. Pretty direct and simple in its concept, but all of this can be done by the business analyst, and that's the key thing, right? So the source system is, it's masked. It's called legacy. The target PFM again And we derive this piece of data. We could change data as well to get it into the target system shape. But here we just said, let's call this LS indicator. This target system required a long-short indicator. And it said if the legacy system units field is less than 0, give it an S right there, right? And if not, it'll be an L. And if I run this, you'll see this is just a sample, right? But the units, there's 2 of them that are negative. If I slide over to the right, this is the field I created, short, long, short, long. And if I back out of this and show you the math that we have to do next, and just so you know, we could set priorities on rules, right? Because one has to happen before the other. And especially in this case, right? We want the negative value to be there so we can identify the long short. And then we want to do the absolute value calc, or multiply minus 1, which is very common from some legacy systems, derivatives, other things come that way, and we want to get it all into an absolute value. So for the units in the target, we want to say if that comes from legacy, that legacy system units field, if it's less or equal to 0, then do this math here. And this is simple, I said, in the context that we can take calculated fields and do other calculations, so we can nest them, and we can do a lot more functions on this data. If any of this falls out, that goes to the error queue that you saw that screen, and I'll show you what that looks like. But I'll just submit this one, and you'll see that the units are all positive now as well. So there, with those 2 rules, I've transformed the data for the performance target system. Simple example, but I wanted to just make a point of that. Here, I wanted to show you just lastly, the repair screen. And the repair screen is really like the catch-all for all activity based on the data quality rules we set and the transformation rules that you saw a couple of just now. And here, probably, if I was going to show you one thing, there's a lot here, right? Sources, multiple sources, the pre-master, meaning what we've derived. And if it failed some rule, in this case, trade date, we can overwrite it, and everyone has a different role, right? There's maker checker capability. If I'm the the fixer of this for this type of error, then I'll fix it, and then an approver can come in and approve what I've done. And there's different ways to do that. I'll show you in a moment. But here it takes you all the way across, and you can see the pre-master, the overwrite fields, the master that's in the database, and the column names. And if applicable, we could put any other data domain here for reference purposes, so that the operations analyst, business analyst doesn't have to leave the screen, right? Now, if I go back to the home, which I didn't start in, you can see that there's the exceptions dashboard, and you can move those screens around. But here you can do select unapproved exceptions if you're an approver, and so on. Next up is this. So this is the culmination, without having to do mastering. This is the investment data model illustration of what it's capable of, right? So you see private equity here, and this is Power BI, by the way. We're just using this as an illustration point. Could be any business intelligence tool. So you have private equity, common stock, and you can look down here and see market value by source. So we have Investran, which is the private equity system, right? And this is Invest One data. So you have public and private. Right, there we go. I just accidentally clicked. But there's, right, you have 42% of the Invest One data and 57 plus on the Invest One data. So the idea is that we can do look-throughs, right? So all of these private equity funds, if we have the constituent holdings and the look-through capability, we can go N levels and then be able to produce a report similar to what a front office, role might be interested in looking at. Next up is the generative AI, the large language model. So I popped in a couple questions here. How many portfolios are present? What's the market value? I will pop in another question. So show me, let me just take this out. Show me the market value of the GHI fund by instrument type as a pie chart. So here when it says it's thinking, there's an agent, a Da Vinci agent, to decide, are we going to the database or are we going out to some outside location? So in this case, and I also left on the show code so that you could see that the code that it was generating, right? So this is, as Rich mentioned, it's not deterministic. This is deterministic, right? You build a report, you expect the result that you expect. Here, this is probabilistic. So there's a lot of interpretation, and as Rich said, you could slide that temperature gauge and come up with some interesting responses.
Yeah.
Another, and we have in testing this, it's fascinating. But this immediately, when I first saw this, I was like, wow, this could be an incredible tool, even for marketing, doing RFPs and things like that. Here, I'm just going to go outside. And this is looking to the Yahoo free service via the API, just to give you a sense that we can go out, right? And the agent realized that based on the prompt or the question, Amazon share prices for last year with monthly intervals, it had to go out to that external source. We could try some others. I don't know if the panel wanted to put some questions together or comment around this.
Yeah, what if you want to look at what's my indirect holdings of Amazon, typical fund to fund look through request, whatever else you'd like to try.
Yeah, let me see if yes, I'll do that one next. This one that I just ran, just so you see at the top, it's the holdings by like the sector description. And portfolio ID is the GHI fund. It's the same thing. I just use GHI fund in one question and use portfolio ID in another.
So it's context aware, and we're happy to show what we did behind the scenes to do that. But as you can see, it's pretty powerful. It's generating the code, rendering it in real time, and can go outside and inside. And this code is reusable. It can be saved. It can be used elsewhere throughout the enterprise or by the data analytics teams.
Pick another one. This is just Amazon. You can also.
And to your point, Rich, the what normally, or what I've seen with other systems, right, is that when they're not built on modern data architecture, right, they have limits of how many gigabytes they can transfer. Things have to be batch, right? I think just as you mentioned, it's the work here that could rather quickly get into the hands of the business user, right? Or even to the fact that you mentioned, like a no code, low code environment, to not require as much IT dependency in order to actually solve the problem at the speed of which the business is requiring it. I think that I find differentiating and very useful for those, and in particular in this field.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, we had one customer that needed us to ingest benchmark and index data, and it was 5 gigabytes. They could barely meet their SLA, and with Snowflake embracing Python and Snowpark, we were able to create a Python Ray engine, chunk the file, even add troubleshooting and grabbing the bad records faster than they could even look at it before. And it's pretty phenomenal what a modern data platform provides. It's just the right team. Small teams can get a lot done much better than they ever could.
Yeah, and the way that I try to correlate it, because I'm not so big a fan of ROI and financial ROI, right? It's really like I try to bring it to an individual, and no one wants to be stuck waiting for a report to load at 5:30 the day of their child's birthday, right? They want to go home and be present with their family and not worry about matters that aren't important, intruding on what isn't actually important. And speed and waiting for batches and systems going down and hoping DBAs look at things, those are the inhibitors to being present to where you need to be. And that's truly what we're trying to solve here.
I think it also demonstrates the power that's unlocked, right? Once you actually manage your data and bring it into a data model, right? Then you can use capabilities like this. It's fundamental, honestly, right? If you're not organizing and governing and managing your data, you really cannot take advantage of a lot of these capabilities.
Yeah, in fact, right, the LLM models are called foundational models. The data management, the data model is the foundation that actually permits these things to be, foundational for large language, right? And that's exactly to your point, John. Way to bring that up.
But just for reference point, this is the Streamlit app that we wrote this in, and we did this in just a few weeks. So we're really taking off with this. There's a lot more that we're interested in doing, but it's fascinating already, right? With what we've already produced.
All right. Well, this is great, John. Thanks, John and Rich, for taking us through a bit of a road test here of the data platform and the Gen AI stuff. Really great stuff to see. So at this point, I think what we'll do is just open this up to Q&A, and I did see some questions popping up during the session. I'll just take them in order. So the first one I see is, it sounds like you've worked on data management implementations for a long time. What's the major differences in implementing solutions like yours in 2023 versus 10 or 10 plus years ago?
Oof. I guess I can take that.
Yeah,
one.
does someone want to go first? Because I have
Okay.
a solid 5-minute answer to this.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, you first. This one, mine's like way too.
Well, I've been at this for a long time, and what this affords us is self-documenting, empowering the people who know the data to create the quality rules, the transforms, and put it in an automated data pipeline with the pre-known model. The other products I worked on, if you needed to extend the model, you had to wait and do an expensive upgrade. We wanted to slash all that recurring cost and delay. We wanted to provide built-in testing of the rules, which John showed you, and then versioning and full audit trail. Most of the legacy apps, if I turned on verbose audit, they'd fall over and you'd never meet your SLA. With the new technology and the platform, all that audit trail, the lineage you have, and then by going no code, low code, you can quickly introduce improvements as your data changes. And as we demonstrated, integrating Invest One from for full round trips with Security Master into the model and persisting it, you get it done faster in 40-60% less time. Go ahead, Chris. It was less than 5 minutes.
To that point, right? Maybe around 2016, 17, whenever the SEC Reporting Modernization Act for asset management came out, I was tasked with automating regulatory reporting for one of the largest asset managers in the world. And it was roughly a 2.5-year project plan, 2-year project plan, I want to say, that required leveraging an EDM system to normalize the data into the new regulatory reporting format, because there was no third-party vendor that was able to do it. There was absolutely no way you were ever going to be able to identify cash, which is like the holy grail of data management, which is investment management of like, how do you know what currencies are? And it took, like I said, we landed the plane, but I had to use things like AutoSys, Informatica, staging databases in SQL, external reporting solutions that were black box, where I actually had to send the SQL code to them to join all the identifiers. Like I basically built not to say it like that, the team I was with built their system, and at least in the way for this regulator or for this asset management firm. The reason why I go on this long diatribe is that I had to be hands-on and in person during that time period, and had a lot of effects in my personal life as a result. And if the capabilities of Snowflake today, right, the ability for it to do entry-level data management items, the ETL capabilities, data engineering capabilities, the lakehouse capabilities of Snowflake were present then, probably could have did that in about 6 months. Right? I'm not trying to oversell this and overcomplicate it. That is what I'm talking about, getting home to the dinner table. That is important. That matters more than whether or not we had a merger for the largest asset management merger in the last 30 years. That doesn't matter as much as the ability to accelerate the amount of time we have to spend on processes that should take 5 minutes, actually taking 5 minutes and not 4 days, right? And that is what the capabilities of the modern data architecture with solution providers like Exafluence, as well as Disruptive Data, as well as FIS, are able to have us do now. We're not going to get stuck at 5 p.m. on a close of a month cycle waiting for something to process in order for us to submit a report to a regulator so that we could go home. And that is drastically different than what we were able to do 7 years ago. That's like one of my stories, Rich. That's kind of why
No, it's a good one. It's a good one.
it's a real one. It's a real true thing. And if what we have today was able to be done then, who knows where things would be.
All right, thanks, guys. So just reading down a few other questions have come in. Do you offer SaaS on any cloud? So I can take that one. Yeah, the answer is yes, right? So Snowflake is available on Azure, AWS, GCP, right? So one of the beauties of us leveraging that service of Snowflake to land the data in the platform is that we can share it amongst the different providers that are out there, the different leading cloud providers. So the answer is yes, we have that flexibility. The next one, how are your license terms different from the legacy MDM and warehouse providers? Maybe Rich, if you want to take that one.
Well, yeah, having represented a couple of companies in that regard over the last 20 years, simplified any domain. We care about getting the data in the format that our customers want. So there's no licensing by security master, pricing master, product master, very simple. And then the data model is extensible by our customers using Snowflake. And it's all simplified. And for certain customers in certain markets, we can start off without that big upfront enterprise license fee and let them grow into it when it's actually live and viable and producing value. And I know that's FIS believes in that as well, John, which is why we teamed up together.
Absolutely. All right, thanks, Rich. We got another one here that, Rich, I think is for you. So how can customers extend the data model? Are expensive upgrades required?
Yeah, well, the way we designed it is we have instrument anchor, using instrument as an example, that relates to party, which can be issuer, it could be counterparty, and then by instrument type, and then for unique integration, there may be legacy systems that have to be supported. We let our clients add extension tables. And if we get the honor to work with some of the folks on this call, you can see that we took that big expensive upgrade off the table. Our components are coupled, but if you need to change a security master rule, you don't have to wait for us to do it or to do product mastering. It's done. It's configurable, and I think that's the key word. It's a configurable platform based on a modern data architecture. And you can add GraphQL, we can add Python Ray to meet, tight SLAs for the largest shop, or to just permit faster and better look-throughs, whether it's derivatives, FX overlay, across both public and private markets.
Great, thanks, Rich. And we've got one last question here. We've got multiple global locations. Do you offer services off hours? So I could take that one. Yes, we do, right? So we are deployed across multiple different regions across the globe, right? We've got customers in all parts of the world, right? North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, right? Middle East, right? So we have a presence in multiple different geographies and therefore also have support coverage for those different geographies, which gives us a follow the sun type of model that we can offer our clients, right? In terms of support coverage. So yeah, just part and parcel of doing business as a global company, right? We definitely have that capability. So that was it for the questions, but of course, we're obviously more than happy to take questions from anyone at the end of the event, afterward, via email, reach out to any one of us. But I'd like to thank both Rich and Chris and John as well for joining me on this session today. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.